So, hello there, and welcome back to yet another Night of the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing Dumb Money. But before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello there to my viewers, but you prefer to listen to your podcasts, well, guess what? You can with this one too, at Night of the Movies on Spotify. And if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check the podcast out visually on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, wherever you may be watching or listening to the podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the podcast, of course, and leave me some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there's always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. So, let's get into it. Dumb Money. So this is a new film directed by Craig Gillespie. I think that's how I pronounce his name. Apologies if it's not. And he previously directed such films as Cruella and I, Tonya. And he also directed some episodes of Pam and Tommy, which came out last year, the limited show following Pamela Anderson and her then husband Tommy Lee Jones. I think that's what his name was. I might be getting it wrong, and apologies if I am. The limited series following them, which came out on Disney Plus last year. And I really enjoyed Pam and Tommy. I did, in the end. I enjoyed that show, but I wasn't the biggest on it. But I thought the best episodes of that show were the ones directed by Craig Gillespie. And I don't care what anybody says, I really liked what Craig Gillespie did with Cruella. I didn't love the film, but I enjoyed it far more than I thought I was going to. Cruella was a far better film than it deserved being. It was a really enjoyable film to watch, really enjoyable. And making a sequel to it, which Craig Gillespie is apparently directing, and you know what? I am looking forward to that. I mean, God knows when it's going to come out now because of the current actors' strike which is going on. But still, I'm looking forward to the Cruella sequel, especially because it's being directed by Craig Gillespie. And I really like I, Tonya. I, Tonya really surprised me because I bought that film on DVD and I didn't know what it was going to be like. I heard a lot of good things about it. It was always on my watch list for the longest time, and last year or a couple of years ago, I think I even reviewed it on this channel at one point when I was using my laptop, my old laptop, to record YouTube videos and YouTube reviews and film reviews and whatnot. You know, I reviewed that film and I ended up really liking it. That film, yeah, I think is great, and the more I think about it, the more I want to re-watch it. And because this film was directed by Craig Gillespie, that was one of the reasons I was interested in it, because it's directed by him, and also because of the cast. Like, if you don't know already, this film has this huge famous cast with people like Paul Dano. If you don't know who Paul Dano is, he most recently played, well, not most recently, but recently he played the Riddler in the Batman. He was also Sammy Fableman's father in the Fablemans. He's been in loads, Little Miss Sunshine, There Will Be Blood. You also have Seth Rogen, which many people might know from like The World's End. It's not The World's End, it's called This Is the End. It's that one. Knocked Up, Neighbours, and also he played, was it Steve Wozniak in Steve Jobs? Is it Steve Wozniak? I'm not entirely sure. I must admit I'm not too familiar with Microsoft and all that jazz. But he played Steve Wozniak in Steve Jobs and did a tremendous job there. And he was also in the Fablemans alongside Paul Dano. So it's a little Fablemans reunion between Paul Dano and Seth Rogen here. Seth Rogen played the quote-unquote uncle in the Fablemans, and he did it really well. He's only a small part, but it's a very memorable part, and that's down to Seth Rogen, I think, for the most part. You also have Sebastian Stan here, which many people might know as the Winter Soldier in the MCU, but he was also in Pam and Tommy, and he was in I, Tonya, so he's worked with Craig Gillespie quite a few times. You also have Nick Offerman, which many people might know as Ron Swanson from Parks and Recreation. You have America Ferrera, who was just most recently in Barbie. You have Pete Davidson, who's famous off SNL and various other things, and you also have Shailene Woodley, and loads more. There is a huge cast for this film. Like, everyone's in it. Well, not everyone, but you get the point I'm making. There's loads of famous people and famous actors in this film. And I didn't know the true story behind this film. I didn't know all the stuff to do with GameStop and the stock. I mean, it's not stuff I really follow, if I'm being completely honest. I'm not really interested in this sort of stuff, and I know it happened a couple of years ago. I remember hearing a couple of things about it, and honestly, I didn't really hear much. It's just not my interest, you know. So I didn't know this story. And the thing is, though, the reason that I was interested in it, though, regardless of whether I knew the story or not, was because it's a true story. At least it's based on a true story. And I think films based on a true story can be really interesting, engrossing, and exciting if the storytelling is done well, if the true story is actually really interesting. Like, I've watched a couple of true story films, you know, where the true story isn't actually that interesting or as interesting as the filmmakers think it actually is. But I've seen a lot of true story films where I sit there and then I go, wow, did that actually happen? And you look it up after and like, oh my god, it did. And so I was really interested in the whole true story aspect of it. The cast was very intriguing, great cast. Craig Gillespie directing. And yeah, I was really, really excited for the film. And as what he mentioned, I didn't know the true story. And according to Google, the story for Dumb Money, the story for this film, goes as follows. Everyday people flip the script on Wall Street and get rich by turning GameStop into one of the world's hottest companies. In the middle of everything is Keith Gill, a regular guy who starts it all by sinking his life savings into the stock. When his social media posts start blowing up, so does his life and the lives of everyone following him. As a stock tip becomes a movement, everyone gets wealthy until the billionaires fight back and both sides find their worlds turned upside down. And that's essentially the plot for Dumb Money. At least that's the Google plot synopsis that I just read off. I wonder how interesting that was. Me reading off a screen just there. But still, that's the plot synopsis for Dumb Money. And honestly, I found this film to be okay. I was actually a bit disappointed in it. In fact, I wasn't a bit disappointed in it. I was really disappointed in it, and I was underwhelmed by it because it doesn't have that spark that you want from a film like this, and it isn't as impactful as it should be. Like, this film is being compared a lot to The Big Short, the Adam McKay film, which came out in 2015, if I'm remembering correctly. That film is brilliant. Like, the first time I saw The Big Short, I remember not really liking it too much. I just didn't really get it. But I've been drawn to rewatch that film time and time again over the past couple of years, and I've now seen it 5 times since I first saw it. And I remember after watching it for the fifth time and being really taken aback by it. And maybe I'll feel the same way about Dumb Money as I do about. Maybe I feel the same way about Dumb Money as I do about The Big Short in a couple of years' time. But the thing is, though, The Big Short has got this directing to it which is slick. You know, it's almost like he's catching his character in the act. And it's really well directed. I mean, it's Adam McKay, he's a great director, regardless of whether his films always hit the right notes. I wasn't a big fan of Vice, but you get the point I'm making. He's a good director, and I really like directing that film, but it's also got some really impactful moments, though. There are so many moments in that film where I sit there and go, wow, and I never really got that from Dumb Money. I mean, maybe as time goes by, I'll feel similar about Dumb Money as I do about The Big Short, as I've already said. Yeah, I'm not feeling like I will. I'm really not feeling like I will. And, you know, I don't think the film is bad. It's got some really good moments in there. It's got some really interesting sections, which, if actually true, are quite shocking and are quite fascinating at the same time. The performances were all really good. I liked that you sort of got the roles reversed with Paul Dano and Seth Rogen. Like, if this film was made 10 years ago, Seth Rogen will be playing Paul Dano's part, and Paul Dano will be playing Seth Rogen's part. Yeah, I like the fact that the roles reverse there, and I like the fact that we get to see Seth Rogen in a more serious role. I really like when Seth Rogen shows his versatility as an actor, because we all know he can be funny. He can be really funny. And I don't know if many people know, though, that he can also do series really well. I mean, look at Steve Jobs, I've already mentioned early on in this podcast. Look at his performance in The Fabelmans, which is subtle but so impactful. And his performance here is really good. And the same with Nick Offerman. Nick Offerman is known for his comedic roles, I know him as Ron Swanson in Parks and Recreation, the best part of that show, in my opinion. And yet in this film, he's not being overly comedic. He's got a couple of comedic moments, but he's playing a very different character than Ron Swanson. I really like all the performances. I really like that they were showing versatility as actors in this film. All of the people, like America Ferrera, she's really good in this as well. Far different than she is in Barbie. And she was great in Barbie. So you get the point, I like all the performances. And I thought it was a well-made film, and I liked parts of it. And the thing is, though, it's really odd to say that it's not exciting. Like, it should be. I mean, I don't know if exciting is the right word, but it's not as engrossing and engaging and impactful. It doesn't have that spark, which is really odd to say for a Craig Gillespie film, because Cruella was wildly entertaining. I was surprised by how entertained I was by that film. I saw it twice at the cinema because how enjoyable I found it as a cinematic experience. And Pam and Tommy, his episodes were the best directed episodes by a long mile. And I really liked his direction with I, Tonya. I really liked his direction with I, Tonya, because it was entertaining and it was also impactful. It also caught those really serious and shocking moments in I, Tonya so well. And yet in this film, his directing feels slow and it doesn't capture those subtle and shocking moments the same way it did in I, Tonya. And I haven't seen all of Craig Gillespie's work, so I can't speak for all of his films, but this is the weakest Craig Gillespie film I have seen yet. And that's a really big shame to say, because I really like what I've seen of him so far. I really like what I've seen of this director's work so far. But this film, I don't know, it didn't have that same energy and spark and impactfulness that you really get in the directing of his previous work, that I've seen. I mean, I'm not saying Cruella is impactful, but it's entertaining, though. It has that spark. And I didn't feel that spark with this film. And I also hated, and this would just be me, and it's all subjective, whatever, but I hated some of the needle drops early on in the soundtrack of the film. Like, I'm not talking about the musical score. The musical score is good. It works and heightens emotion in certain scenes. Well, I can see what it's trying to do, the musical score. There was a couple moments later in the film where the musical score is clearly trying to heighten emotion. It wasn't really heightening emotion for me because I wasn't too invested in what was going on, which is another thing. I wasn't too invested in any of the film, but nevertheless, that's not the point I'm making. The musical score is not bad. I'm talking about the soundtrack, though. The use of songs. I really hate modern day music for the most part. And I know it's probably just me. I'm a big, if you can't tell already, I got Beatles t-shirt on right now. I'm a big 60s music fan. I love 70s music, 80s music, 90s music, well, some 90s music, and some music from the early noughties. But I'm not a huge fan of modern music. In fact, I detest modern day music. And there's some needle drops with modern day music in this film. At least I think it's modern day music. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. But there's some music drops. There's some needle drops with modern day music used early on in this film, which I found really unengaging. Like, I'm sitting there going, this song is so bad. It's just so bad. And that song that they just used there in that scene sounds exactly like the song they just used in the scene 2 minutes before. And I'm just sitting there going, what is this music? And the thing is, the needle drops in Craig Gillespie's previous works, whether it's Cruella, Pam and Tommy, and even I, Tonya, are so on point. And I didn't feel the same about the needle drops in this film. And some people may be watching this or listening to this podcast going, well, yeah, it's just needle drops in a film. Why is that so important? Because if the music in a film is not working, it can take you out of the experience. It can make it unengaging. Trust me, it can. I've watched plenty of films when I'm sitting there going, it would be so much better if the music was so much more on point here. And it was investing me, immersing me, engaging me more into what was going on. It can with many films. I watched many films in the past, like Casino. Martin Scorsese's Casino is a great example where the needle drops have drawn me more into the film, engaged me more into the film. Or Craig Gillespie's previous films, as already mentioned, like Cruella and I, Tonya, the previous films of his that I've seen. But in this film, it got me more unengaged, and I really hated the needle drops. Now, as the film goes on, the needle drops become less, they're not used as much. But they used quite a bit in the opening half an hour to 40 minutes, and yeah, it really, it annoyed me more than it engaged me, and I really hated the needle drops in this film. Like, I understand why they were there. They were trying to set the scene for when the film takes place. And if people don't know already, the film is set in 2020 and 2021. But my response to that is, if someone was saying, oh, well, yeah, the needle drops are there to, to tell the audience when the film is taking place. My response to that would be this. The film is set in 2020 and 2021. There was a pandemic going on there, and in the film, it covers that. There is a section of the film which covers the fact that there's a pandemic going on when the film is set, and you see people wearing masks. COVID-19 is referenced quite a bit, and yet, so yeah, you would understand from the fact that people wear masks and the fact that COVID-19 is referenced, you would understand when this film is going on. Take out the needle drops, you would understand when this film is going on. I just don't think the needle drops are needed whatsoever. It really annoyed me that. And I know it won't be a big thing for many people, but the needle drops, they didn't work for me, and I found them really unengaging. I found them really, really unengaging. And maybe that's just because I'm a big music guy. Like, I'm a huge music guy. I play a musical instrument. But yeah, they didn't work for me in this film. I didn't mind the musical score. It didn't work for me, but I understood what I was trying to do. I didn't mind the musical score. Yet, the needle drops really annoyed me. I went on about the needle drops a bit too much there, but just to use the songs in the film, yeah. It just, it should have been better. And the whole film should have been better. And, it's got some good moments. I'm not saying it's a bad film. I really like the relationship between Paul Dano and Shailene Woodley's characters in the film. And I really like those performances. I liked Nick Offerman in the film. Sebastian Stan was quite funny to watch in a couple of moments, and it does have some funny moments. It has some interesting moments, but it's not as fascinating as it should be, and it's not as interesting as it should be, and it's not as entertaining as it should be. Like, The Big Short is an entertaining film. I, Tonya is an entertaining film. And the thing is, those films are about serious and, at times, dark subject matters, but they deal with them in such an entertaining, at the same time, though, impactful way, and I didn't get that from this film. In fact, it made me want to rewatch The Big Short more, and I didn't expect to say that coming out of this film. I really didn't. Because even so, I've become more of a fan of The Big Short over time. And even so, I do think it's a brilliant film. I don't think it's one of the best films of all time or anything. And I don't even think it's one of the best films of the past decade. But, you get the point I'm making. I would have rather watched The Big Short again. Because, to me, that film has that spark. It has that directing, which is slick and constantly moving. And it is engrossing and really has those moments when it catches you off guard. I remember one moment in The Big Short revolving around Brad Pitt's character, which really hit me in the heart. I didn't get that from Dumb Money, though. And also, one last thing, it felt disjointed, because there's about 50 storylines going on in the film. There's not 50 storylines, but it feels like there's 50 storylines going on in the film. And yet all the storylines are separate. They don't really cross over. I mean, they sort of do, but they sort of don't at the same time. The storylines don't really cross over. And I understand that the film is set during the pandemic and, people self-isolating, people weren't really mixing during the pandemic. So I understand that it makes sense and all that the characters don't actually cross over because they're based in real life people and they're based in real life events, and it's based in 2020 and 2021 when there was a global pandemic going on. I lived through it, I remember. But at the same time, though, it felt disjointed, and it felt at times like these actors were in different time zones for these scenes, and it didn't feel as... It just didn't feel like it was as there as it needed to be. For a film like this, I wanted to be blown away by it. I wanted to be fascinated by it. I wanted to find it wildly entertaining at the same time, and I wanted to find it impactful, and I just didn't. I don't think it's a bad film. I don't think it's a bad film at all. But I wouldn't say you go out to cinema to see it, and I would instead recommend that you wait for the film to either come out on streaming or come out on DVD, depending on whether you still watch films on DVD. I know some people don't, but wait for it to come out on streaming, because I actually think you'll get a better time out of it. Yeah. I was disappointed by this one, not gonna lie. Yeah, especially from Craig Gillespie. I know it's not a name that many people might be familiar with, but Cruella is a fun film. It's a really fun film. I don't care what anyone says, it's really good. And I, Tonya is a great movie. That's just a really, really great film. And his episodes of Pam and Tommy were really great. Those episodes of Pam and Tommy I remember the most. The episodes that he directed. Yeah, I just think he missed a beat with this one. Still, I'm looking forward to what he does next. But for me, Dumb Money didn't really work. It's not a bad film. It's got some good moments, and I can see why somebody would absolutely love this film. But for me, I didn't find it nearly as engaging and impactful. It just didn't have that spark. And so for that reason, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. The reason I'm giving this film a 6 out of 10... It's another film that I almost feel bad for giving a rating to. Like, I felt this way about another film I reviewed not too long ago on this channel. I almost feel bad for giving this film a rating, because I'm not even sure if I totally got it. I'm not sure if I totally understood the film, because it is a complex film, not too dissimilar than The Big Short. It's complex. It deals with a lot of financial stuff, which, as I already mentioned, is not really my kind of interest. So, pardon me, maybe I just didn't get it. And I'm giving it a 6 out of 10 because I didn't think it was a bad film, but I can't say that I enjoyed it. You know, I don't know. Maybe I should give it lower. I mean, a 6 out of 10 seemed logical. And yeah, that's what I'm saying with the film. A 6 out of 10. It's not bad, but it just wasn't for me. That's where I'm sitting with the film overall. Just needed that spark. It just needed more spark. So that I'd find it more engaging and really find it more fascinating and powerful. Because I just didn't. I don't know, I've said that quite a few times in this podcast already, but it's what I really wanted from this film. And I, as I already mentioned, I like a good true story film. But this one, the true story, maybe because I didn't get it, but the true story I didn't find that interesting either. But that's just me. Dumb Money didn't work for me, but hopefully it'll work for you if you haven't seen it. And if you have seen it, let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. But as already mentioned, I'm going to say that Dumb Money, I'm going to say that it's a 6 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that is it for the podcast today. As already mentioned, if you have seen Dumb Money, let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. Maybe you love the film and it's one of your favourite films of the year. And if that's the case, that's great. I don't want to take that away from you because, as I've already alluded to, in 5 years or so time, I might really like this film. But for now, it just didn't work for me. Maybe I need to see it again. I don't know. Maybe not. But if you did enjoy the film, let me know your thoughts on why you enjoyed it in the comment section below. And also, if you didn't enjoy the film, let me know why in the comment section below as well. And I should also say, sorry about the lighting in this room for the podcast today if you're watching this on YouTube. I'm having to record it quite late in the day because at the moment I can't record in the middle of the day because I'm having the bathroom done in my house, so we're having the bathroom done. So yeah, I don't really have the opportunity to record in the day right now, so my podcast for the next couple of weeks might look like this, unless I get up super early and record in the morning. But yeah, I just wanted to apologise for the lighting in this podcast if it isn't the best. But if you did watch this podcast or listen to this podcast at this point, thank you as always for watching or listening. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this podcast. And look forward to many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. I can't believe I spoke about this film for over 26 minutes. Man alive. Anyway, guys, as we mentioned, thank you as always for watching or listening, and I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.